Join me in welcoming RJ Nemer, one of Akron's fine young men, and our special guest today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me today. I have to apologize. I'm frankly a little embarrassed. I didn't realize my coming here would cause the road closures, so I am sorry for the inconvenience I may have caused it. But I appreciate you all coming out on a rainy day and coming to hear me speak a little bit about golf. I was thinking, driving here, pulling out the driveway, and I don't know if many of you go through this, but you were kind of recall coming out of the driveway, and the next thing you know, you're somewhere. And you think to yourself, how did I get there? You kind of almost have to go back and think about the turn-by-turn you made. And while I wasn't truthfully going to go in this direction, talking about this when I got here, sitting back here and listening to Tom Knoll speak about me, I had this, how did I get here moment, which I find in my career I have quite frequently. I had known Eddie Elias growing up, and he always had great tickets to sports venues, and he always had great clothes and a great car, and he was married to a national spokesmodel. And I thought, I think I could sign up for that life. So he was somebody that I aspired to be, but I couldn't quite figure out how to get there. And as Tom correctly pointed out, I didn't have a golf pedigree, I didn't have a sports pedigree, and he's kindly said I knew a little bit about sports management. I actually knew nothing about sports management. But what I did know is I knew that there was a connection between sports and business and PR and fashion and marketing, all of these things that I found very fascinating. And I thought, well, if I just get the chance to do this, I think I know how to make a business out of this. But the opportunity just wasn't presenting itself. And so I thought to myself, it's just not in the cards for me. I'm going to go ahead and pursue the traditional practice of law. But I found myself every Monday wishing it was Friday, which isn't the best way to go through life. And so I decided, I think I can start a sports agency. And so I kind of put together a business plan, and I sat down and I talked to my father, who's very, very conservative. And I said, I really think I want to do this. And he was adamant about, I just don't think it's a good idea. And why don't you go talk to Tom Knoll? He said, Tom knows a lot about golf. He's an attorney like you, and he would be a good person to seek some advice. So I said, okay, that's a great idea. Tom and I were just talking about it at the table. I still remember sitting in his office, and I went through everything. And Tom was probably one of 2 or 3 people that when I told this idea, didn't look at me like I was a unicorn. And he said, to his point, I think you should go for it. And so I thought a couple of days about it, and I was in my office, and it was my 30th birthday, and I took out a legal pad, and I kind of made a column, and I wrote reasons for success, plus, minus. And the minus side got populated really quick. Don't know anybody, don't know what I'm doing, have a limited amount of funds, I'm in Akron, which wasn't in Akron for sports, blah, 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 blah. Really quick, 2 pages. So now I'm gonna write the positives. And I'm staring at it, I'm staring at it, I'm staring at it. And I wrote on it, because I think I can. Then I stopped for a minute and went down to the managing partner and resigned. And went and talked to my parents, and my dad's like, you quit? Yeah. What did Tom Knoll say? Tom Knoll said to go for it. I think they're still speaking terms, aren't you? But so I guess what I'm trying to say in my illustration earlier about driving is, I go from sitting in his office and kind of talking about this as a pipe dream to him introducing me here. And I have to think for a moment, how did I get here? So I would like to share one story about, because most people ask, how did you get your first client? So I figured that the more people I would tell about this, maybe somebody would know somebody who would know somebody. And fortunately, I met somebody who was kind enough that said, I played on the Duke University golf team, and I know a guy, he just got what was then called the Nike Tour, it's now called the Web.com Tour. He said he just got his Nike Tour card, do you want to meet him? Which was gargantuan for me. And I said, oh, that'd be great. He said, this is about maybe 4 or 5 months into it. He said, he's down in Florida. So his name is Joe Ogilvy, and I flew down and I met Joe, and I said, this is what I want to do, this is why I want to do it, this is what my plan is. And he said, that sounds very risky. How long are you going to give it? And I said, I figure I'll know in 6 months if I can make a break. And he said, do you have a contract? And I said, no, I haven't gotten around to doing that. But I said, if you want to shake hands on it, we can go from there. And he goes, okay, you got to do it. We shook hands. I managed him from that point for 16 years until he retired. And in 18 years of having Icon, never had a signed contract with the player. I just said, listen, here's the deal. This is how I started. This is how we're going to stay. So we'll shake hands, and if you ever get mad, you can leave. And if I ever get mad, I'll tell you to leave, and we'll go from there. Knock wood, in 18 years, nobody ever left. It made selling the company a little tricky. Because when I'm sitting in New York at these law firms, and William Morris, who's the parent company of IMG, so I'm sitting with their gargantuan legal team and their due diligence people, and they said, we'd like to see your contracts on file so we can establish a purchase price. And I'm like, well, there actually isn't any. But they ended up liking the concept. And I came in, I guess it's been 14 years, 14 months, initially to oversee North America, but a few months ago was made global head of golf clients. So overseeing about 128 golfers on all tours across the globe. And we have offices in, I want to say, 22 countries. So about half of those offices having golf divisions which report in. So it's fantastic and surreal. And although, like everybody in here, there are some days you hate your job too, I do as well. But I try to remember as I'm going through something or a great venue or getting to meet somebody or getting a really unique opportunity, I find myself still thinking, I'm not sure how I got here. Because I still really do remember sitting in this office in the basement of some building in Merriman and walking through a lot of airports by yourself and staying in some pretty bad hotels because you don't have any money and you're not really making any. I try to remember those things, and I try to, when young people ask me, how do you do it, or how did you do it, or how do you get into it, I try to remember feeling like that as well, because I was very fortunate that although most people were more than happy to line up and tell me why I wouldn't do it, I just kind of chose to listen to the few that told me to go ahead and go for it. And I guess I just realized in life sometimes you have to create what you want to be a part of. So it's a thrill for me to come back here a few blocks from where I went to school and spent far too much time daydreaming about this, to come in and actually say this is what the job is. I know that David said you guys were going to be submitting some questions electronically, and I'd love to answer specific questions about the industry or trends that are going on in the industry and things like that. My initial comments that I'll make that maybe will help you think of some questions. A lot of people wonder how, what's the state of golf like now? And Tom and I, again, were talking a little bit about this earlier. It's golf goes like everything goes in cycles, and you ride waves. And when I started, which was very fortuitous, this guy named Tiger Woods was just coming out, and so golf goes from being kind of in a lower tide to swelling. And the media attention he brought globally, and the amount of television contracts and dollars that pumped into the sport, really everybody that kind of is associated with golf or touched golf, really, like or dislike him, really benefited from his involvement in this. But then, you have the tragedy of 9/11, and things take a dip. And then maybe they start to get a little bit better until Tiger has his personal problems, which take a dip. And so you ride the wave, but where we are right now is there's this great group of young guns that are coming out. we're trying to grow the game within the industry. The USGA, our governing body, is trying to grow the game to try to make it more affordable, more accessible. Less time, basically. They're encouraging 9 holes as opposed to 18 because people just don't have those 5-hour chunks of time to give out. So we're trying to get more progressive and younger and accessible, and a sport that really opens itself up to people of all ages and to families to be able to spend some great time together, albeit sometimes very frustrating because it's a tough sport. But that's kind of where the trend is going right now, overall. Before we get to questions, one last thing I want to encourage. Being in golf, there are, I hate to say different tier events, but I'm going to have to say it that way. There are different tier events, and there are some more premier events, and there are lesser known events. And everybody knows the majors. But what you have to understand in golf is the majors and the WGC events, one of which is in our backyard here at Firestone, sponsored by Bridgestone, is right on that tier. And we, being in the Akron, Northeast Ohio area, are really lucky to have this caliber of an event at this caliber of a club with these great sponsors. And I would encourage you to support the event, because I think it's one of those things that we all, being kind of in our backyard, maybe take for granted, but if it ever weren't there, would be a really bad thing. And I go to enough of these events and see enough of how communities become engaged and get involved and the energy that's around it. And I would love to see that we can continue that in Akron and grow that in Akron, because it really is so important, not only for, well, selfishly for me, for the golfers, but also for all of us here in the community, to make sure that that event stays robust and stays healthy and grows here as well. So that's kind of a golf on a grassroots level as to where I think we need to be with that. Do you want to go to some? Sure. Steve, thank you very much for having me.
As he indicated, RJ has graciously agreed to respond to questions submitted by our audience. And you may still send questions via your mobile devices using the Quail technology. And once again, instructions for using Quail can be found in the brochures at your table. You may also submit written questions using the note cards provided at each of your tables. Please raise those cards to be collected. And David Hunter, who's the Secretary of the Board of Akron Roundtable and Program Committee Chair, will present your questions. David?
Thank you, Steve, and RJ, thank you for your address. You were inviting questions along the line of trends in the sport, and let's start off with this trend-oriented question. There seems to be an awful lot of technology that's invading a lot of sports now, including golf, and they hit their drive and there's a little tail off the ball now that you can see on television. And also, you can observe on occasion they'll show the slope of a green for TV viewers, and I'm wondering if you could comment on this trend, and does it pose a risk to the integrity of the game, to the event that players might gain access to this during a round?
The technology that you're seeing on TV now is something that actually golfers have been using kind of, I won't say behind the scenes, but in terms of preparation prior to an event. They have something called a TrackMan or a launch monitor that they'll put down that will give a golfer an unbelievable amount of data as to a flight pattern a ball takes, or at what speed it's traveling, or all of these things to help them understand their exact yardage. Well, at least for me, maybe many of you, if you asked how far something was away, and they said, no, it's between 20 and 25 yards, that's close enough. But for a golfer, that's catastrophic. So the technology that you're seeing on TV that kind of gives you as a viewer, this is how a green is undulating, or this is how this type of course sets up, the golfer will have had that information prior to playing an event by either walking the course with his caddy or his caddy making notations. You'll see them a lot looking in their yardage books, taking a lot of that type of surrounding information down. What I found fascinating about the sport, and I didn't know going in, is a lot of times when these guys are on the driving range working with equipment providers, mean, I've been with, folks from Titleist or Nike or any of these big things. They'll have literally physics scientists there with them that have designed the ball, that have designed a particular club face, because it's a very technical and very intelligent sport in that sense, and there are so many little nuances that can affect, how a ball will react to it being hit. So while technology seems new to us on television, it's actually been employed for quite a while behind the scenes.
Here's a Quail-generated question from one member of our audience, but probably was on everybody's mind. In a relationship business like yours, what mindset or strategy has helped you connect so well with so many people with such great success?
That is a good question. I usually get asked, and maybe I'm going to answer it this way, I will often get asked, who's your favorite client? And my response is the one sitting across from me. Because you really have to adapt very quickly to, you're dealing with a number of personalities, whether it's across the board with your clients, their significant others, their parents, or whether you're dealing with a sponsor when you're going to negotiate a particular endorsement. So my thought process is to always figure them out as soon as I can and engage them with what they want to talk about. I ask a lot of questions, and when we go to recruit a particular player, I do a very quick glance around the house to see what pictures are up, what magazines are thrown around, because I'm trying to figure out a way to connect with them right away. And people like to talk about themselves, so if you can figure out what they're interested in and push those kind of buttons, I think you'll have success. I read an awful lot of biographies and autobiographies, and I'm an especially big fan of quotes, so I have a lot of quote books. And a quote by Maya Angelou, people will never remember what you said, and people will never remember what you did, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And so I try to remember that when I'm going in and meeting somebody, because I want the person with whom I'm meeting to feel really elevated. It does take a little bit of mental energy in the sense that sometimes after a long day of doing that, you come home and your kids and wife are like, hello, 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 don't talk to me right now. But it's just something, I guess after 20 years, I kind of have gotten used to being able to adapt to it.
We're getting an interesting mix of questions, some about the game itself, some about your fantastic rise in the sport, and also even about the athlete-agent relationship. So here's an interesting question. If you were LeBron's agent, what would you be focusing on right now? In 25 words or less.
I think I have a tremendous amount of respect for what he's accomplished, and I think what he's done for our community is remarkable. We were talking a little bit, again, earlier at lunch, about some expletives during this event yesterday, and on the way here, we're talking in terms of, actually one of the guys with whom I work said to me, so if he's our client, would you tell him to issue an apology right now? Which is a great question, and I've been not on that same stage, but we've had clients. I had one client that ripped a locker off his hinges, and we've dealt with these types of things before. I think right now for LeBron, the tolerance level, the level of forgiveness that we're all willing to extend to him is probably at an all-time high. And I think in the heat of the moment, literally and figuratively, he probably didn't exercise his best judgment. So I think that for this particular scenario, I probably wouldn't address it, but overall what I would be doing with him, there's not a lot to fix. I mean, I think he's been a great role model. I think he's done some fantastic things for underprivileged youth. I think that he's trying to really be an embodiment of hard work and determination. So I don't think there's really a lot to do or fix with him right now.
Here's sort of an overarching question with a little specific tail on the end of it. Have you seen corporate sponsorship in golf evolve over your career, and where do you see it going in the future? And the little footnote on it would be, how do you address the sport in a way so that the golfers, while they're in competition, don't start looking like NASCAR drivers with all the patches all over themselves?
We've seen, I guess, over the past couple decades, I've seen a trend in spending, corporate spending more money, but what we're especially seeing now is that it's, and this kind of goes to the second part of the question, David, it's less about what we call the impressions or the signage on the player. Because by putting XYZ company on a shirt and the player playing doesn't necessarily mean that XYZ company is going to sell more widgets. So whereas at the outset, or when I started, there was a focus on impressions, the pendulum has kind of shifted, and companies now are more interested in the experience and the accessibility to a player. So when we go into, and I was at a pitch earlier this week, when we're going in and talking to a company, it's more about if you sponsor this player, you will get a certain amount of appearance days with this player. And you'll be able to utilize that time to entertain your top producers, or to court new clients, or to court new customers, etc. So it's really all about accessibility and experiences now that we're selling. And it helps us in the sense to avoid the NASCAR look, to be able to say, you can have this player, and you can have what we call name, image, likeness, which means you can run him or her in ads, and you'll get this certain amount of dates with him or her to activate as we can plan for you. But the thought of, well, your logo is on their sleeve or their hat has almost become a bit of a secondary in corporate America. It's obviously different with the equipment companies, because people, myself included, sometimes make the mistake that when you see somebody playing Titleist, thinking, well, if I don't buy that same product, I don't do the same thing, which isn't going to happen. But as long as people keep believing it, that's fine, because we'll do well with those deals.
Of course, the acquisition of Icon by IMG was a big story, but the big sub-story is they wanted more than your business. They wanted you to be coming along with them. Tell us a little bit what it's been like to work with IMG, especially with their trending now beyond the boundaries of sports into things like fashion and broadcasting.
So a little bit of a background on IMG. Prior, it was founded by Mark McCormick. When he passed away in the early 2000s, it was bought by a private equity company in New York called Forsman, who sold off bits of the company. A lot of our football representation and individual sport representation was sold, and it really became more of a media distribution company. The only two sports that maintained for client representation was golf and tennis. About a year prior to me being acquired, Ted Forsman, who had owned IMG, passed away, and his estate had the company up for sale. IMG was bought by William Morris, and the combined company, which is a famed Hollywood agency, but much smaller in terms of size. I mean, it was a 500-person company buying a 5,000-person company. But William Morris had such a stronghold on authors and motion pictures and television and movie stars and all of these types of things that they saw a lot of complementary business. So as the current structure, our company is currently titled WME IMG, is who my technical employer is, although most people here know us as IMG. I don't really report into anybody at IMG. I report to the CEO of WME, who is a very client-oriented, focused type of person, which is great for me being in the client business. But we see a lot of crossover between, perfect example is, LeBron doing the cameo in the movie Trainwreck, which WME handled. Or we have various celebrities like Justin Timberlake, who likes to play golf, so we plug him in on that side. So it's kind of what I had envisioned when I was daydreaming about doing all this 20 years ago, is that I saw this whole sort of, I guess, globe of all of these different disciplines in entertainment, let's call it, that had some commonality and crossover. And I enjoy being able to kind of blend all of that every day in a really creative sense, which is really encouraged by our corporate culture.
Let me pose a question that you can duck if you want to. Everybody is totally flabbergasted by your fantastic rise through the sport. You have children. Do your children know about your story when on your 30th birthday? And can you comment on whether or not you are concerned that they would view that and prompt them into making an impulsive decision later on in life? Or do you see that as inspiring them to have a dream and go after their passion?
Did you write that, or somebody said that? That's a good question. Father's Day, I guess, was last week, and my daughter is 13 and generally doesn't think I'm very cool and always tells me to drop her off where nobody can see me. And I try to think like all kids, but I don't know. But she gave me a Father's Day card and wrote in it, "You inspire me every day," which I thought was probably the best thing you could say. And it was funny because just last night my son was telling me he seems to be fascinated by I don't know why, by the travel industry. He's always like trolling on TripAdvisor to look at hotel ratings. And has an idea for starting a hotel chain. And although I don't know why, but so we were talking a little bit about it last night. He's 12 and he said, "Well, what do you think I should do?" And I said, "If you want to do it, then study about it, write a plan, and do it." So I'm just. No, I would never discourage them from that. I just think that anybody who I never personally wanted to look back and say, well, what if I would have done this? What if I wouldn't have? I wonder what would have happened. I have a paperweight on my desk that says, what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And I try to instill that in my kids because, nobody bats 1,000, so inevitably you're going to have a swing and a miss on more than one occasion. I hate using all these analogies, but it's that ball you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I would encourage them to go for it. I'd encourage anybody here to go for it, really.
What's your take on what you perceive to be the millennials' reaction to the game of golf, this upcoming generation?
That whole millennial thing is a tough one because I hate categorizing a group of people like that because I think it's a little unfair. I mean, I was interviewing a millennial once and she took out her phone during the interview, started texting, put it back in her pocket and said, "I'm sorry, that was really important." But by the same token, I was interviewing one who was a superstar. And I would hate to classify her as, I guess I would hate to label her. I just think that's kind of unfair. But what I will say is, this generation of young professionals that have grown up in this instant gratification, touch the screen sort of world, is conditioned to that very quick instant gratification that we all probably are guilty of taking advantage of. Golf is deliberate and thoughtful and slow-paced and pragmatic and all of these things that may seem contradictory or that it would be kind of contrary to what these millennials are, but I find that if given the chance and given some coaching, these young people will embrace that and understand that it maybe just isn't about golf to be more deliberate, but maybe it's a little bit of a great sort of overreaching or sort of permeating rule, if you will, to take your time and be deliberate in things. So I actually think it could be a good teaching tool for them.
We have lots of questions. We have time for just a couple more here. The obvious question is, do you play golf? And if you're standing on the first tee to play, who would the other three players be in your dream foursome?
So I'm horrendous. And Ian Poulter has been a long-time client of mine. And he was a former teaching instructor when he lived in Great Britain. And so I go down to see him frequently, and this was a few years ago, and he was like badgering me, we've never played golf, we have to go play golf, why don't we go play golf? Let's go play golf. And finally I said, okay, we'll go. And he said, so we're on the driving range, and we had everything ready, and he goes, well, let me see your swing. So I put a ball down, hit the golf ball. And this is a true story. I hit the golf ball, and I looked up at him, and deadpan serious, he said to me, was that serious? I wiped my club, and I put it back in the bag, and I said, I'm never playing with you again. And I think he actually, unfortunately, that was a legitimate question. So, yes, but not very well. But I've got the best looking equipment and golf clothes on the entire planet.
We have time for 2 more questions. We have a very good question about the LPGA. How's it doing, and what's it doing to change golf for women and for golf in general?
So we have a really, really robust practice on the LPGA Tour, and represent from Lydia Co to the top. We have a man that runs that division for me, who's been with IMG for 30 years, and it's just fantastic. Unfortunately, I guess it would be art imitates life, if you will, in the sense that the disparity of money on the LPGA Tour versus the PGA Tour is astronomical. The top woman in the LPGA Tour's endorsement deals would be maybe like a number 30 or 40 on the PGA Tour. So there's a massive disparity in terms of how they're compensated. I think that what we're trying to do, and we actually had a couple conversations about this last week, is utilize the LPGA Tour and professional golfers to inspire, if you will, women out there that can utilize golf in their everyday life to network and to hopefully advance their careers and to go out and play with their kids and things like that. So we're hoping to utilize it as a platform to inspire more women to get involved in the sport. I think the dollars really come down to television and television contracts, which is what kind of determines where sponsorship value lies. I'm not sure how we can change that. I mean, I think if you had another Nancy Lopez emerge, or somebody that had this sort of very easily embraceable, iconic image about them, it would be great for the sport. We have a couple young women that I think, one of them just won the PGA Championship, Brooke Henderson, who I think as her career progresses, could be something that inspires more women to want to become involved in the sport of golf. And I hope it's a trend we see very soon.
As we often do, we'll close on a lighthearted note. You already shared with us your driving range experience with Ian. One member of our audience asked, what's the coolest sports agent experience you've ever had?
That's a tough one. I've had some pretty neat ones. I guess what I would say is it would be hard to say what the coolest was. One of the most memorable was being invited in Warren Buffett's office for lunch. And getting to spend about an hour with him, and consequently now having what I'll loosely term as a friendship, because I call him Mr. Buffett. But it was amazing. It was one of the most, and any time I've spent with him since then is some of the most inspired time you can imagine. And I can't believe I'm about to admit this to a large room. But what's really unique about him is when you're speaking to him, you will literally and genuinely and authentically feel like you are the most interesting person he's ever met in his life. Logically speaking, I know that's not the case. But when I talk to him, that's how he makes you feel. And every time I walk away, I think to myself, I hope I can get that. I hope I can glean that skill from him. Because I think being able to really make people feel fantastic in your presence will not only be great for your career, but probably the relationship with your spouse and your kids and any of your friends as you progress. So I hope that's something to take away from them, and I'd say that's probably the coolest thing that I've experienced.